Hello and welcome to the big picture. The communal atmosphere, which has been relatively calm in this country for the last few years, suddenly seemed to be taking a turn for the worse in the last few months. The eruption of communal violence in Kishtwar last week and the tension spreading to some other parts of Jammu and Kashmir has become a matter of great concern. While the speculation on the cause and the extent of damage and danger it poses is still being assessed, there is no doubt that such incidents would harm the country's communal atmosphere. There have also been communal incidents of varying scales reported in the last few months from states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and Rajasthan also. What are the reasons behind the communal atmosphere once again getting disturbed? What is the politics of communal violence in this country? How far are the political parties responsible for it and why sometimes governments fail to contain them? We will discuss all this today with P.L. Punia, Congress MP, Nirmala Sitaraman, National Spokesperson of the BJP, and Vinod Sharma, Political Editor, Hindustan Times. Let me first go to Mr. Punia. Mr. Punia, you have been in this unique situation where now you are an MP, but you have also held very important positions in the government. You have been a bureaucrat. You have also been the Chief Secretary. You think when these kind of communal incidents flare up, is it because the governments don't take action, or there is some kind of a nexus between certain political parties or governments that these things prolong for some time, or do you think that there is something which cannot be controlled immediately?
You see, incidents do take place. It includes communal incident or any other incident. No one can anticipate, no one can predict that such incident is going to happen. But the question is how to tackle that,
Right.
how to deal that with situation.
Right.
We must always try to diffuse the situation and control and take action against the culprits and protect the remaining property and the life of the people. That is more important.
Whose responsibility is that?
The state government.
Okay.
The law and order is the state subject,
Absolutely.
is the state's responsibility.
So the governments need to take responsibility when things go out of control. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, definitely.
So
Whichever is the state, whether it is Jammu Kashmir, whether it is Madhya Pradesh, whether it is Rajasthan, whether it is UP, it is the state government which has to face the situation and resolve the situation, resolve the problem.
Mr. Kishtwar, Mr. Punia, in the case of Kishtwar, there have been reports saying that there was information, there was intelligence, there was some kind of a situation which had been created in the last few months, and this kind of thing was developing there. You think the government there has been a little have not acted in right time? If they had acted in right time, taken some precautionary measures, this wouldn't have happened?
No, I don't agree with that. You see, at the hindsight, one can always say that the state government should have taken this step and that step. But no state government or no administration would like to ignore a reliable information that such and such thing is going to happen. They will definitely take action. And in this case also, it's very unfortunate that 3 lives were lost.
Yes.
3 precious lives were lost. Out of that, 1 is Hindu, 2 is Muslim, and it's very unfortunate. And the state government has definitely taken action. The minister has resigned, and they have set up an inquiry to give a report so that the further action can be taken wherever if there has been any laxity in the matter.
Nirmala, you think that in this case in Kishtwar, we'll come to the other things, we'll come to the larger issue of why communal violence happens, but in the case of Kishtwar, it was, the moment it happened, and the BJP seemed to be in a hurry to capitalize on what had happened there. Your leaders tried to go there. In this kind of a situation, is that the kind of reaction a responsible political party should?
I'm absolutely shocked you're asking this question. A responsible political party also has a role to play and to gather information, to understand what is going on.
Don't you think we should wait for some time before not such things?
This is a kind of question with which you can always corner an opposition party and say, you shouldn't go now, you should go some other time. A visit of a dignitary, especially those who are holding positions, responsible positions such as leader of the opposition, I would have thought it would have been a very good, very open and very welcoming gesture if the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister had accompanied, for whatever reason, the leader of opposition, shown all the wonderful steps he has taken in order to curtail. And I would certainly want to buy Mr. Punia's argument. No government would want to have such things happening. And I'm sure within the given capacities, given information base, given the kind of forces that they can call at their, using their good offices, will want to quell such things. And therefore, even if I want to assume for a minute that the Jammu and Kashmir government did take such steps, what is wrong when a leader of the opposition who represents so many, elected members of parliament, going there, take him along, show what you have done, and then appeal to the people to say, please, all political parties cooperate, because it also has a dimension of international border very close by.
Absolutely.
And therefore, I would have thought a far more constructive approach would have been to take along, show him the place you want to show, and then also say, please, can everybody cooperate, because this is a very sensitive matter. What has happened, on the contrary, is something which you're trying to immediately, and I'm certainly saying National Conference did try to bring in this dimension of how many Hindus, how many Muslims. We have not asked any of those. In fact, let me remind here, Sushma Swaraj's tweet was saying, please, people are dying, can the Chief Minister take some kind of step, which is an anxious voice. Whereas you found the reply coming from the Chief Minister saying, there we go, this opposition party, BJP, is trying to ask, bring in communalized language into it. She only called for help for people who are dying. Where is the communalizing here? And therefore, I think I do not want to take it any further than what I have said here. Approach to handling such delicate situations. Mr. Punia is absolutely right. The same approach, same method, same measure should be applicable for everybody, not just when it is National Conference or Congress.
Vinod,
Yeah.
you think that, in these kind of situations, whoever is in the opposition, the opposition always would like to go and meet and, go to those kind of areas and try to extend their whatever, sympathy or whatever it is. You think that, when such opposition leaders try to go there, stopping them is something which can only exacerbate the situation instead of helping?
Well, you see, I would not like to be partisan in this debate, because I think communal violence is a grave threat to India's social fabric.
Right.
And it should not be at any cost countenanced in any manner, be it administrative failure or political one-upmanship. I, on the strength of being a reporter who's covered many communal riots, I started my career, in fact, by covering a communal riot in Aligarh. And thereafter Moradabad, Meerut, Delhi, Gujarat, so many of them. I remember very vividly that Jagjeevan Ram had gone to Moradabad consequent to a communal riot, and he came back to Delhi and was giving a press conference which I joined midway through. And I asked him, sir, there was a problem that the SP of the area was just appointed, and it had no good idea of the terrain of the city, and that perhaps caused exacerbation of the riots, and they spread. He said, young man, you have joined the press conference late. I had at the very outset said that I had gone there not to apportion blame or to pass a judgment on the genesis of the riot. My sole purpose was to ensure that people were reached relief in curfew situations.
Right.
Now, at another stage, I put the same question in a different form, and he just snubbed me. He says, do you think you're a lawyer that you can put the same question in a different form and get an answer out of me? I think there's great lesson in what Jagjeevan Ram said and did in that situation. I think that this whole business, and I think it applies to all. I'm not being critical of Sushma ji at all. I'm just saying that if there was a grave situation in Kishtwar or anywhere else in Jammu and Kashmir, the leader of the opposition in the Lok Sabha could have just picked up the phone and spoken to the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir rather than tweeting it. I think tweets in these times should be avoided, abhorred, because they only spread panic. They only make people more anxious. And I think that
And also, people are nowadays using tweets to score political points.
That's what I'm saying. So I think, as I said at the very outset, on this, I would like the political class to be one. And, yes, of course, what Nirmala says is fine, that if the Chief Minister and the Leader of Opposition and other people from other political parties go together and visit these drought-affected areas, it has a salutary impact.
Right.
But then the decision for that has to be left to the state government entirely, because they are the best judge of the situation. As was pointed out in the course of the debate in the Rajya Sabha, yes, of course, it is embarrassing. It is one thing which is eminently avoidable to block the movements of the Leader of the Opposition to the airport. But as was pointed out by the officiating Home Minister, that Section 144 is status neutral, it is caste neutral, it is religion neutral.
In fact, there is a curfew out there in Kishtwar. I think Mr. Punia wants to react. Yes, Mr. Punia?
I just want to make a small point. It's very unfortunate that leader of opposition in Rajya Sabha, Sri Ranun Jaitley ji, was put to inconvenience by not being allowed to visit Kishtwar, the riot-affected area. In such situation, I can tell you about my experience that in such situation we must trust the local administration or the local state government. If they say and certify the situation is such that we must avoid visit to this area because the administration, the police, the army, they are busy in resolving the issue, in catching hold of the culprits, in stabilizing the situation. So in such situation, I think it's better to wait for 2-3 days, and after 2-3 days one must visit, and the visit must be very smooth and with the assistance and with the approval and concurrence of the state government and the local administration. That is always better, that is always appreciated,
right,
so that the situation doesn't flare up.
Right.
If we go there and then a lot of people gather, and that may create more problem. So in such situation, we must wait for 2-3 days and then visit.
Nirmala, don't you think, that's what I was also asking. Why don't you wait? Why can't people wait for some time, so that, see, you are also, you only mentioned, and everybody, even others also mentioned, this is one of the most sensitive states we have. There is international, dimension to this whole thing. So don't you think that instead of trying to score a political point, wait and then go and, whatever needs to be done has to be done?
I've already disagreed with you.
You
on
already
that.
disagreed, and
I also have underlined. I'm so pleased and convinced to know these are the kind of inputs that we're getting today from people who matter in public policy. For the 10 past years, we've heard comments differently. And today, if this is going to mark a change in the political value system that
you have to explain what you're trying to say.
I've not even finished saying what I'm
Yes.
saying. I'll explain it afterwards if you still don't get me.
Yes.
If this kind of a turning point is going to come in the political discourse, it will be healthy for the country. I'll explain it now.
Yes, please.
March 1st, after February 28th, there was a visit of members of parliament to Gujarat.
Right.
And why am I bringing Gujarat here? Because the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir spent a lot of time and through tweets, the same
Yes.
tweets which...
Both of you and he indulged.
No. My response to him was after 24 full hours after his tweeting. If Twitter is sensitive, and which has been the valuable opinion from a senior journalist, we should also understand, therefore, if the opinion has come from the Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister trying to compare Gujarat. Therefore, I'm bringing in light.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm not here to bring in Gujarat in the least available opportunity. But since he's tried comparing, March 1st, after 28th of February, a delegation of members of parliament went all over Ahmedabad, all over. And the next day, like Mr. Punia says, and that is a very experienced opinion, because you, as you introduced him, said he was the chief secretary, he's held very important positions, and he knows the district level, administration strength. On the advice of district level administration, police and their executive, this delegation was not allowed to go to some parts on 2nd March.
Right.
That was taken up in a very big way. Until today, we are being reminded, oh, you restricted the movements of some of the members of parliament. So that measure which Mr. Punia is talking about, at least in retrospect, if you have arrived at it, gives a very, very satisfying position that such measures, thumb rules are equally applicable for everybody.
Mr. Punia, would you like to respond to that?
No, you see, the situation is different from each case. Gujarat, at that point of time in 2002, must have certain circumstances, and they permitted the leader of opposition or some leader to visit some areas and restricted some areas.
Let's respect that.
Situation is different. You can't compare. You can't compare Gujarat with Kishtwar, and you have to depend on the local administration's opinion and the state government's opinion. Again, Gujarat must have allowed the leaders to visit.
Okay.
No, again I agree with Mr. Punia, and therefore that knowledge, that input, that experienced, valued opinion should be effectively passed on to Omar Abdullah ji.
Okay, I mean, anyway, whether Omar Abdullah will take Mr. Punia's opinion or suggestion, we don't know. But anyway, we need to go into a very short break now. We'll come back and continue this discussion. Please keep watching. Welcome back. We are discussing in the context of what has happened in Kishtwar about the politics of criminal violence. Vinod, I want to come to you. Vinod, Kishtwar is one thing which is in the last few days has been a cause of major concern. There is no doubt. But as I mentioned in my introduction also, there has been certain incidents of criminal violence in several states, especially in UP and Bihar and Rajasthan and all these places. Why do you think that there is this criminal situation in this country is suddenly on the rise?
No, first of all, Girish, one thing that, if I said something about Sushma's tweeting, I also equally disapprove of what Mr. Omar Abdullah did by way of responding to her on Twitter. We are, in the backdrop of our experience with what happens to Rohingya Muslims in Burma,
right,
and the fallout in Bombay and in Karnataka,
and in Assam also.
In Assam. Now, you see, on the basis of that experience, I think that there should be an unwritten understanding between political parties that they are not going to use Twitter as a medium of communication in such situations. I think that would be the safest thing to do, because most political parties are in power in different states.
Right.
So it is not by any stretch of imagination a measure which is going to go for or against anyone. Right. It is, I think, something which everybody should accept. Insofar as the growing number of incidents of communalism are concerned, actually it's very scary. If you remember, Girish, that when the communal violence bill was sought to be brought and there was a debate happening on that, I think a very good point was raised by the BJP that there is no need for this bill, because those days are gone when people can be divided through violence on communal lines, because modern India will not accept it. Now, whoever is getting it done, and I'm not here because I'm not an investigating agency,
Yes.
I'm not a commission of inquiry, I really don't know what's happening and who's doing it. But yes, of course, I can make intelligent guesses, and that will again be hazardous as using tweets for communication.
Right.
What I want to say is that we must understand, the political class must understand, and political parties must take this message to the people that 21st century India has no place for communal violence, that 21st century India will refuse to be divided through such tactics in order to vote for and against someone. You see, this is self-defeating. If this is not put a stop to now, it will keep on happening and it will take us back to the cave ages or to the medieval times when this used to be a tactics to divide people. 21st century India pe kya jagah hai? There is
Right.
no space for this thing.
Absolutely. I mean, nobody can disagree with what you're saying. Let me get Mr. Punia. Mr. Punia, you think that, the time has come now with just elections, just a few, not even a year away, and, all political parties very anxious to get as much as possible the attention of the people as much as possible. Is this not the time when all political parties should sit and take a resolve, as Vinod was talking about, that using religion or these kind of situations to gain votes can be a very major disaster for this country? And first of all, do you think that these
I agree
incidents
with,
these incidents are happening in the context of forthcoming elections? Do you think there is any correlation to this?
I was going to mention this, that as the elections approach,
Yes.
in the election year, the number of communal incidents go up. So there has to be some correlation, and I think it needs a research by some expert like Vinod ji. This is one thing, and it's very intriguing to see that efforts is made to polarize the society into religious groups or the caste groups to get votes. So we must avoid this, we must desist from doing this, and any temptation on this must be
Avoided.
given
Okay.
stop.
Okay. Nirmala?
So this is what I feel.
Nirmala, you think that
And
there
I
is
agree that there is no place for communal violence. There is no place for communal violence in the 20th and 21st century, and we must, as one nation, fight the
Okay.
election and elect a suitable political party or suitable candidate for this.
Nirmala, you think that there is a correlation between the incidents increasing, in the run-up to the, when the election year, or do you think that these are all isolated incidents which you can't, really place a hand on?
I hope there is no such correlation. And I think it's time now for us to talk about the rights of citizens who are all with aspirations for good education, good health, future bright prospects for their children and so on. So the issues which should be those which make up for an electoral debate should be focusing on the aspirations of the people. And therefore, I think it is important to talk on how political parties are going to deliver on those aspirations. What is the formula they have? How are they going to stand out and say, this is what we have done, this is what we are capable of doing, and therefore vote us? Therefore, I hope there is no correlation, and I hope people do make sure that the debate focuses on development, debate focuses
when
on...
you say that, when you're hoping that there is no correlation, why do you think these incidents happen, are gain in numbers during as the elections approaches?
Well, I'm no expert and I may not want to guess, and it is also probably not right to guess about incidents of communal violence which happen in Assam, Rajasthan, Jammu and Kashmir, all with one brush. Each may have its own context, each may have its own agent provocator. So I may not be able to, with one brush, say it's all happening because of X or Y reason.
Okay.
But I think the country should make a conscious attempt to move over to.
All political parties, do you think it is time for all political parties to get together and say that, in this year we will, when election, we will not use these kind of situations for elections or
Whether they say it or not, they have to show it in what they're
they
doing.
have to show it in what they. Yes, Mr. Punia, very quickly.
No, there are some sections of the society, they say and they strongly believe that after the departure of BJP from Bihar government,
Yes.
the incident started, and whether it is Nevada, whether it is Bodh Gaya, never happened when the BJP was together. But this aspect must also be looked into. And I agree with Nirmala ji that we must focus on development. We must focus on positive issues
Yes.
like future
Okay.
of the children, future of the society, and
Okay, Mr.
Girish ji.
Yes, very quickly.
Now
We
that the
completely run out of
debate
time.
has moved a bit further from being, apolitical, and since Mr. Punia has chosen to take the example of Bihar, I would now take the example to say
Quickly,
of how.
we completely running out of time.
No. I will try to make it quickly. Specifically, people who are casting in aspersions on other parties, particularly in the context of communal violence. And here I take the example, since Mr. Punia has referred to Bihar, the General Secretary of the Congress, who seems to be like with due respects, sometimes like a loose cannon saying things, should be stopped.
Okay. Yeah.
Insinuations don't work.
Vinod,
yeah,
isn't this the biggest danger? The blame game starts, and the political parties will start, accusing each other, and that is where the danger lies.
Girish, don't you think it's so ironical? Mr. Punia, can I just come in, sir? Isn't it really ironical? Isn't it really ironical that on a day, India passed a resolution, Indian Parliament passed a resolution against Pakistan,
Yes.
for what it was doing on the LOC,
Yes.
as a retributive step, as a response to what Pakistani Parliament did, that we are discussing communal situation in India.
It is ironical.
You see, it is really ironical.
It is ironical,
because
Vinod.
India is a non-denominational secular state,
Absolutely.
and Mr. Advani himself is credited with the view that the genesis of Kashmir lies in the fact that India declared itself as a non-denominational secular state to negate Jinnah's two-nation theory. Now, what are we doing? But through these communal riots, we are bringing India down in the esteem of the Committee of Nations.
Okay,
that the
Vinod.
moral high ground we always had
Okay,
vis-a-vis that country, we are losing that.
Okay, Vinod, we are completely run out of time. Sorry. On that note, we have to end. Communal violence is a disastrous and very dangerous thing. Everybody will agree to that. But how far in the coming in the run up to the elections to the year, hopefully we will see a much better communal atmosphere in this country. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. P.L. Punia, Nirmala Sitaraman, and Vinod Sharma. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in Big Picture same time tomorrow.